Billionaire husband vacations with mistress. Unknown. His pregnant wife is watching from the hotel next door. Fireworks exploded violently over the glittering Sea Cliff resort, casting brilliant shards of crimson and gold across the glassy ocean. But the real explosion was unfolding behind closed doors. Leonard Eastbridge, billionaire tech genius and heir to a global fortune, raised his crystal flute of champagne intimately toward a seductive, mysterious red-haired beauty. Gabrielle Nichols, the infamous socialite whispered to have ties to the nation's elite. Unseen and unnoticed, Leonard's pregnant wife, Emmeline Eastbridge, stood frozen behind a velvet curtain, her trembling hand pressed protectively against the growing life inside her. Each dazzling burst of fireworks was like a dagger in her heart, illuminating her husband's chilling betrayal in unbearable detail. Emmeline had known life with Leonard would be dazzling and complicated. Born to international wealth yet carving his own billion-dollar legacy, Leonard captivated the world's elite. He dazzled Emmeline, a small-town girl raised by humble teachers, with his brilliance and hidden vulnerability. She offered him genuine warmth. He promised her an empire of dreams. Now those dreams shattered before her eyes, replaced by betrayal's cold, cruel reality. Her legs shook, heart raced, mind spun wildly. Was this betrayal spontaneous, or a calculated deception long hidden? Tonight was meant to be a joyous celebration, Emmeline revealing their unborn child to Leonard in romantic bliss. Instead, she's alone, eclipsed by Gabrielle's magnetic allure. As fireworks thundered overhead, Emmeline pressed her shaking hand to her stomach, resolving silently. This betrayal would not go unanswered. Viewer engagement prompt. Feel the suspense? Comment 1 if you're hooked by this shocking betrayal, or 2 if you sense an unexpected twist ahead. Leonard Eastbridge's life always teetered between incredible triumph and subtle emptiness. Raised in the lap of luxury, he aimed to break free from the shadow of his father's shipping empire and his mother's storied heritage. By the time he was 25, he launched an innovative data analytics firm that landed him among the top young entrepreneurs to watch. Media outlets flocked to him, praising his fearless approach to tech acquisitions and expansion. Despite the neon glare of paparazzi cameras, Leonard was surprisingly humble about his accomplishments. Where others saw a celebrity billionaire, he still saw the restless boy determined to claim success on his own merit. When he met Emmeline Hampton, now Emmeline Eastbridge, he discovered a calm he never thought possible. Their relationship bloomed swiftly. He was enthralled by her devoted work for nonprofits, her volunteer experiences in underserved communities, and the sense of purpose that guided her. Emmeline, in turn, found comfort in Leonard's drive, his willingness to invest not just in companies but also in social causes. She believed they could cultivate a philanthropic empire together, bridging both of their passions. For a time, they did. They sponsored libraries, donated to hospitals, and funded scholarships for promising youths worldwide. But success came with sacrifice. Leonard soon found himself pulled across continents, Dubai for a keynote speech, Berlin for a tech expo, Tokyo for a major business deal. Emmeline often stayed behind, focused on her humanitarian projects. It started with mild loneliness. She would text Leonard updates on her day, sometimes receiving nothing but a curt, "I'm in a meeting." Then a gnawing silence persisted even when he was physically home in New York. She'd greet him with eager news about a local fundraiser, but he would skim details absent-mindedly, already thinking of tomorrow's investor calls. In the midst of that hush grew a tiny spark of hope. Emmeline discovered she was pregnant. She believed a baby would reignite their connection, give them something to celebrate. Yet as her belly swelled, she sensed Leonard's emotional distance widen. The cold question that haunted her was, if the idea of fatherhood didn't draw him nearer, then what invisible tide was pulling him away? Gabrielle Nichols entered Leonard's orbit in a blaze of high society whispers. She was an actress-model hybrid who'd graced a few soap operas and walked the runways in Milan. The tabloids labeled her a modern-day femme fatale, an opportunist who rarely shied from the public eye. Yet she had a gift for exuding empathy at just the right moment, offering a listening ear and a spontaneous smile that made people feel seen, even cherished. Leonard first encountered her during a swanky New York fundraiser at a sprawling rooftop. It was one of those glimmering nights, string lights overhead, cocktails in tall glasses, and an ambience of glitz polished to perfection. It began innocently, so Leonard told himself. Gabriel slid up beside him at the bar and joked about how corporate galas rarely had decent music. Her quips made Leonard chuckle, erasing the tension from his shoulders. They talked about everything from the latest in digital marketing to her hope of expanding philanthropic initiatives in an overlooked neighborhood of Queens. Yet as the conversation deepened, so did her allure. She found the crack in Leonard's armor, his frustration with constant business pressure, his doubt that his philanthropic work was just an accessory to his public image. To be fair, Leonard did not plunge into an affair overnight. Days of text exchanges escalated into late-night phone calls. He appreciated Gabrielle's perspective, fresh, bold, and supremely confident that a life of unrestrained desire was not a bad thing. He even saw glimmers of Emmeline's altruism in Gabrielle's supposed interest in charity. That was before he realized these glimpses were meticulously crafted illusions, shaped to tug at his vulnerabilities. By the time physical lines were crossed, Leonard felt like he was locked in an undertow, unable to break free from the riptide of seduction. Amid all this, Emmeline was more concerned about how to break the pregnancy news to a perpetually absent husband. She dreamed of cooking him a homemade dinner, lighting candles and revealing the ultrasound photo. But every time Leonard returned, he was either exhausted, drifting away in his thoughts, or anxious about urgent deals. And so her cherished secret stayed wrapped inside her, a precious truth unshared, even as Gabrielle's presence cast a lengthening shadow over their marriage. Viewer engagement. Prompt: share where you're reading from. Does your city embrace grand galas like these? The evening Emmeline finally glimpsed the stark reality of her husband's betrayal was supposed to be the start of a celebratory vacation. Leonard had invited her, along with a handful of close friends, to Seacliff Resort for his birthday, a place perched on a private coastline known for its turquoise waters and star-strewn skies. Emmeline thought this might be the perfect moment to announce her pregnancy. She pictured a jubilant toast, the glow of candles around them, as Leonard realized his dream of fatherhood was within reach. But the day they arrived, Emmeline felt his distance more than ever. He disappeared for suspiciously long intervals, returning with shallow excuses about last-minute business calls. Late that afternoon, Emmeline decided to go for a quiet walk along the shore when she noticed something odd. From the vantage point of her suite, she saw Leonard on the balcony of an adjacent villa, wearing a half-unbuttoned linen shirt, speaking intimately with a tall, red-haired figure. Gabrielle Nichols, shimmering as if she'd stepped out of a movie scene, draped her arms around him, and they shared a soft laugh that twisted Emmeline's stomach. The shock left Emmeline trembling, unsure whether to confront him immediately or wait for a more private moment. She summoned the courage to knock on the villa door. No answer. Instead, she glimpsed them through a gap in the curtains, her husband touching Gabrielle's cheek as though comforting her. It was a sight more damaging than any rumor, a real moment of tenderness that confirmed this wasn't just a fleeting fling. Heart racing, Emmeline backed away. A sense of humiliation and grief swallowed her as she staggered to her own room. Desperate for a confidant, Emmeline called Sophie Whitmore, her closest friend since childhood. Sophie, a pediatric nurse back home, was appalled. "You need to tell Leonard about the baby right now," Sophie urged, "before everything spirals further." But Emmeline was torn. Could she demand moral responsibility when Leonard was clearly so far gone? The day dissolved into a blur of self-doubt and tears, and by nightfall, she'd found herself hidden in that neighboring suite, forced to watch her husband toast champagne with Gabrielle under the swaying palm trees. When Leonard's birthday evening arrived, the Seacliff Resort hummed with opulence. Luminescent lanterns lined the private beach. A 4-tier marble fountain in the shape of a mermaid spouted water dyed with swirling blue lights. Waiters glided through the garden carrying silver trays of rare wines and delicate hors d'oeuvres. It looked like a fairy tale festival, and Leonard wanted it to be the talk of every influential circle from London to Los Angeles. Word had spread that some VIPs would arrive by a helicopter, ensuring the spectacle was truly elite. Emmeline, wearing an elegant ivory gown that concealed her growing belly, tried to maintain composure. She would endure the night for appearance's sake. After all, the press had taken an interest in Leonard's philanthropic expansions. He prided himself on having a saintly public image, though in private, the facade was crumbling. She moved among the well-dressed crowd, smiling politely at old colleagues of Leonard's and responding to congratulatory nods from acquaintances. Inside, her stomach churned with both pregnancy queasiness and dread. Halfway through the party, Leonard slipped away, murmuring something about greeting a prospective investor. Suspecting the worst, Emmeline followed him at a distance. The winding pathway led to a secluded terrace overlooking the sea. Her heart sank as she saw Gabrielle Nichols already there, her slender hand resting on the stone railing, glimmering under the overhead lights. Leonard approached, leaning in close. They exchanged words Emmeline couldn't hear, but the intimacy in their body language spoke volumes. The air around them seemed charged with a forbidden electricity. Suddenly, Gabrielle brushed an invisible speck of lint from Leonard's lapel, letting her fingertips linger on his chest. Emmeline felt hot tears sting her eyes. She gripped a nearby column for support, fearful that if she stepped forward, she'd either break down or confront them in a way that would cause a scene. Both outcomes terrified her. Yet she couldn't let the evening continue with this silent torment. Seacliff staff were starting to wonder why the guest of honor and his wife spent so little time together. Emmeline decided, after the last toast, she would demand to speak with Leonard privately. She would finally reveal her pregnancy and confront him with his betrayal. Viewer engagement. Prompt: are you on Emmeline's side here? Comment Team Emmeline if you hope she stands her ground. As the festivities reached a crescendo, Leonard proposed a toast at the resort's main terrace. Guests gathered under a vast canopy of tropical leaves, the ocean breeze ruffling their formal attire. As he praised everyone for coming, friends, business partners, philanthropic associates, he flashed his signature grin. Emmeline stood on the periphery, barely able to listen without her mind drifting to what she had witnessed. The microphone gleamed in Leonard's hand, and for a heart-stopping second, she imagined him revealing her pregnancy to the crowd, making a grand gesture of love. But the moment passed. He concluded with thanks for their continued support, no mention of a wife or a child. Emmeline's eyes burned with disappointment. The applause roared, confetti cannons erupted in shimmering gold, and the resort's fireworks illuminated the horizon. Leonard stepped off the small stage into a flurry of handshakes and clinking glasses. Eager to demand a private word, Emmeline swept through clusters of guests, only to spot Gabrielle weaving her way toward him with that confident stride. In desperation, Emmeline caught the attention of Benedict Carlyle, an old family friend who had traveled from London. Benedict immediately sensed something was wrong. He saw the tension etched on Emmeline's face and guided her behind a tall palm for privacy. Through choked whispers, she confessed what she had seen. Benedict's jaw tightened, his voice simmering with protective concern. "I'll help you leave if you want," he said. "Or would you prefer I confront Leonard myself?" Just then, a giggle cut through the air, and Emmeline glimpsed Gabrielle leading Leonard by the arm toward a discreet path near the fountains. The final straw snapped inside Emmeline's heart. She had to speak now, or she would break from the pressure of her silence. Summoning a trembling courage, she let Benedict guide her through the throng of revelers. They zigzagged past clusters of champagne-clinking guests until they reached the path's entrance, where Leonard and Gabrielle had vanished. But the route split into two directions, one toward the beach, one toward a remote garden. The hush in the garden beckoned with moonlit statues and flickering torches. Emmeline's breath caught as she and Benedict ventured into the shadows, unsure which direction would lead to answers or further heartbreak. She found them by a marble bench framed by hibiscus flowers. The branches overhead swayed gently, scattering patterns of moonlight across the scene. Leonard stood close to Gabrielle, his hand on her arm, as though they were locked in intimate conversation. Emmeline could scarcely breathe. Never in her life had she felt such dread, but the sight that unfolded next was even more devastating. Gabrielle tilted her head up, and Leonard bent ever so slightly to place a soft, lingering kiss on her lips. Emmeline's heart shattered. Her entire world collapsed into a kaleidoscope of betrayal and heartbreak. Blood rushed in her ears, and she could barely register Benedict's muffled gasp. The man she had loved, trusted, and married was here, giving Gabrielle a gentle kiss in a moonlit garden, while his pregnant wife stood mere steps away, reduced to a trembling shadow. Her cheeks flushed as tears welled up. She felt an almost primal urge to lash out, to scream accusations that would cut through the night. But her voice failed. Before Leonard and Gabrielle noticed her presence, Emmeline turned on her heel and fled, Benedict hastening after her. She burst out of the garden through rows of curious guests, ignoring the swirl of floral perfumes and expensive colognes. Confusion and pity flickered in the eyes of some onlookers. Perhaps they guessed the cause of her distress. They parted like the Red Sea as she hurried by, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. She made it to the resort's front entrance, where the valets were helping departing partygoers. Benedict summoned a car in hushed, urgent tones. Emmeline thought she might collapse from sobs at any moment, but she gripped the knowledge of her unborn child like a lifeline. As she slid into the back seat, she pressed a palm protectively over her stomach. A flurry of whispered questions buzzed in her head. Could she really walk away? Would Leonard fight for her, or for them? Was there any salvageable future left? For now, she knew only that she had to leave. Anything to escape the cinematic horror of Gabrielle's mocking eyes and Leonard's irrevocable betrayal. Emmeline spent that night in numb silence at a nearby boutique hotel, comforted only by the presence of Benedict, who called Sophie Whitmore for emotional reinforcements. Sophie arrived by first light, fierce concern radiating from her as she brought hot tea and gentle embraces. Emmeline recounted every painful detail, the glimpses of flirting by the fountain, the stolen kiss, the heartbreak of planning to reveal her pregnancy, only to witness her husband's disloyalty instead. Sophie listened quietly, then urged Emmeline to see a doctor. Stress could endanger the unborn child. Later that morning, Leonard discovered where Emmeline had retreated, courtesy of Benedict, who delivered an ultimatum on Emmeline's behalf. Come prepared to tell her the absolute truth, or don't come at all. When he arrived, he looked like a man whose fortress had been razed overnight. His shirt was rumpled, hair disheveled, and eyes bloodshot. He sank into a seat opposite Emmeline in the hotel lounge, hands trembling at his sides. She demanded answers. How long had he known Gabrielle Nichols? How could he do this when Emmeline carried his child? At the mention of her pregnancy, Leonard's expression changed from shame to shock. His voice broke as he admitted he had no idea she was expecting. Emmeline, he whispered desperately, I never intended for it to go this far. It was a mistake, one that spiraled. He searched for words, his face crumpling with regret. I've felt so isolated, so pressured to keep growing the enterprise. Gabrielle. She saw that vulnerability, and I let myself be drawn in. Emmeline clenched her jaw, tears slipping free. And you never once thought of talking to me? I'm your wife, not some passing fling. She glanced away, one hand splayed over her belly, the other balled into a fist. Leonard, you betrayed everything we were building. Our relationship, our philanthropy, this baby. He nodded, eyes glistening. I know. I'm sorry. If I could undo it, I would. But please, give me a chance to make this right. I'll end it with Gabrielle. I'll step back from the business deals if I have to. I just can't imagine life without you. She stared at him, uncertain whether the love she once cherished could outweigh the pain. For her child's sake, she decided to see if he would actually keep his word. Viewer engagement. Prompt. Would you give Leonard a second chance? Let us know your thoughts. In the days that followed, Leonard made swift and grand gestures. He cut off all communication with Gabrielle, switched lodging to a modest suite in the city, rather than returning to the opulent penthouse he'd once shared with Emmeline, and presented a candid explanation to his board of directors. Strangely, that was when he uncovered the bigger scheme at play. A competitor named Vincent Hayes, known for aggressive corporate takeovers, seemed connected to Gabrielle. Tracing a series of email correspondences, Leonard discovered that Hayes had bankrolled Gabrielle's infiltration, hoping to destabilize Leonard's personal life, and by extension, his business empire. If Leonard's stock value dropped amid scandal, Hayes could pounce for a hostile acquisition. When Benedict Carlisle and Sophie Whitmore learned of this revelation, they confronted Emmeline, urging caution. Perhaps Gabrielle did more than we realize, Benedict said gravely, sliding a handful of suspicious documents across a table at the hotel cafe. You have to see how deep this manipulation goes. Emmeline scanned the proof. Payments from an account linked to Hayes. Records of Gabrielle's frequent visits to Hayes's office. Her stomach lurched. The betrayal still stung, but it also recast Leonard as both a victim and a fool. Leonard, for his part, cooperated with an internal investigation, determined to root out every vestige of Gabrielle's sabotage. The more evidence surfaced, the more Emmeline questioned whether Leonard's transgressions stemmed purely from lust or from a carefully orchestrated emotional trap. Either way, the anguish felt the same. She wrestled with a maelstrom of emotions: love for the father of her child, hurt by his unfaithfulness, and pity that he, too, had been deceived by a cunning conspirator. Reporters latched onto the scandal like sharks scenting blood. Paparazzi staked out the boutique hotel, snapping pictures of Emmeline shuffling inside after her OB/GYN appointment, her cheeks etched with sorrow. Each morning, new headlines shrieked, "Billionaire Eastbridge's mistress speaks out," or high society drama, the pregnant wife versus the femme fatale. Emmeline found that, ironically, staying in the same orbit as Leonard might be safer for her privacy than going it alone. Even so, she kept Benedict and Sophie close, her unwavering support system in a world where truth seemed to warp into grotesque shapes under the scrutiny of the media. Less than a week later, Gabrielle Nichols struck back with a sensational televised interview. Reclining on a studio couch with theatrical tears in her eyes, she insinuated that she and Leonard had been planning to start fresh in a stylish Manhattan penthouse, shutting Emmeline out. She brandished a key, ostensibly proof of her access. "Leonard told me this was our future," she said, voice trembling. "He was lonely, misunderstood, and I was there for him." Emmeline watched the broadcast in shock from Benedict's townhouse, heat surging into her cheeks. That key story was a lie. She knew it because the penthouse in question belonged to Leonard's extended family trust and had never even been offered to him directly. Leonard's phone nearly blew up with angry messages from board members and anxious investors worried about brand damage. Gathering the last of his nerve, Leonard staged a factual takedown of Gabrielle's statements. He provided property records that contradicted her claim and leaked emails linking her to Vincent Hayes. Ultimately, the public discovered her performance was more manipulative than confessional. Yet the havoc inflicted on Leonard and Emmeline's marriage remained a real, bleeding wound. Emmeline wrestled with the question of whether forgiveness was possible or even wise. Watching Gabrielle's smirk on that interview replay only solidified Emmeline's sense that Leonard had been played, but he had also willingly opened the door. She told him, "You're responsible for the heartache you cause, no matter Gabrielle's motives." With tears in his eyes, he agreed wholeheartedly. They started couples therapy soon after. Each session forced them to unearth hidden resentments and to voice pains they'd buried beneath a veneer of glamorous, philanthropic success. 3 weeks after that scandalous interview, a quieter hush fell over their lives. Emmeline, now visibly pregnant, moved back into their penthouse on her own terms. She kept separate quarters from Leonard at first, reclaiming space for herself and the baby. She worried about the future, but tentatively accepted Leonard's continued apologies and daily proofs of devotion. He turned the penthouse rooftop into a serene greenhouse for her, filled with lush plants and bright flowers, a symbol of nurturing something fragile into full bloom. Only time would reveal whether this love story could be woven back together, thread by thread, or whether the betrayal had inflicted a tear that no amount of heartfelt contrition could mend. For now, at least, Emmeline allowed a glimmer of hope to persist alongside the heartbreak, knowing that sometimes the greatest journeys of redemption begin at the brink of absolute despair. Final viewer engagement prompt: if you think love can still conquer this betrayal, comment hope. If you believe Emmeline should walk away, comment freedom. Thunder roared through the San Francisco night, splitting the sky like a wrathful omen as Ileana Cress glided onto the blazing red carpet of the Grand Monviero Hotel. Her floor-length gown glistened under the torrent of camera flashes, standing as a brilliant shield against the swirling cyclone of rumor that threatened to devour her alive. Every lens zoomed in on the radiant, pregnant figure, shoulders squared, eyes unwavering, as she arrived not with her billionaire husband, but with Leon Braxton, the elusive tech tycoon whose name alone could send gossip columns into overdrive. Gasps ricocheted through the crowd of socialites. No one could decide which sight was more arresting: the elegantly expectant Ileana Crest, or the powerful man at her side, reputed to possess a fortune that eclipsed even her husband's immense wealth. Where guests anticipated a measured evening of charity toasts and polite conversation, the air now bristled with tension, electric and palpable, as if one spark could set the entire ballroom aflame. Only days prior, speculation had gripped every tabloid. Victor Crest, mastermind behind the Crest Foundation, had been spotted flaunting a stunning new flame, Rafaela Cross. Critics and fans alike devoured every salacious detail. Billionaire ignores pregnant wife, revels with mistress at high society gala. The headlines screamed, fueling intrigue and scandal. Upon arriving at the Grand Monviero earlier that evening, Victor had walked in with Rafaela on his arm, her audaciously cut dress ensuring she became the center of every camera's focus. Whispers of the event's philanthropic mission drowned beneath the roar of speculation over the trio's explosive entanglement. Elena gripped her jeweled clutch so fiercely her knuckles blanched, a silent testament to the emotional turbulence swirling within. She navigated the marble corridors flooded with luxury and excess, designer gowns, platinum cufflinks, the constant click of overpriced heels. Yet even with each flurry of flashbulbs, her expression never wavered from that poised blend of stoicism and heartbreak. At her elbow, Leon Braxton stood stalwart, as if he had braced himself for the epic drama unfolding. Each time an awestruck onlooker dared stare too long, he responded with a calm, protective glance that silently declared Ileana was under his shield. Across the room, Victor Crest's steely gaze locked onto his wife, fury and uncertainty warring behind his eyes. Rafaela, ever the showstopper, angled herself for maximum spotlight. In that instant, you could almost hear the splinter of glass as their once perfect facade began to fracture. Little did anyone suspect how far the aftershocks of this single evening would travel, or how devastating they would be when they finally reached their breaking point. By the way, if you're tuning in for the first time, let us know in the comments. Where are you reading from tonight? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment 1 if this opening hooked you, or 2 if you think it needs a twist. Days after the gala, the aftermath settled into the Crest estate like a rolling fog, thick, inescapable, and haunted by silent questions. Ileana woke each morning with an odd mixture of anger and resignation swirling through her. Her dear friend and longtime publicist, Melinda Wu, had moved into one of the guest suites to help manage the relentless press inquiries. Melinda was the first to see the scathing headlines. Victor Crest tumbles in philanthropy rankings amid rumored love triangle, or Rafaela Cross, the dazzling new face in elite society, but for how long? While Ileana tried to shield herself from the tabloids, she couldn't ignore the sting of betrayal or the unstoppable wave of scrutiny. Her pregnancy was no longer a private milestone, but a paparazzi magnet, spurring headlines that speculated on her child's paternity, her emotional health, even her weight. To maintain a sense of normalcy, she focused on routine checkups and baby preparations, going so far as to redecorate an upstairs nursery with soft pastel murals that evoked a sense of tranquility, an oasis in a desert of chaos. Victor, meanwhile, moved like a ghost through their mansion's grand halls, torn between his guilt and the allure of a new reckless romance. He showed up for dinner exactly once, only to leave 5 minutes in, claiming urgent foundation business. Elena watched him retreat, a swirl of anger building in her chest. She thought of confronting him, screaming, demanding an explanation, but some deeper part of her recognized that the man she once admired was buried beneath layers of vanity and self-indulgence. Adding to the emotional strain, Leon Braxton offered discreet messages of concern and support. A philanthropic visionary in his own right, Leon had the resources and reputation to salvage the Crest Foundation from any negative fallout. Perhaps more surprisingly, he also seemed genuinely concerned about Ileana's well-being, often sending short, heartfelt texts like, "Thinking about you, take care of yourself first." She found herself grateful for that lifeline of empathy, aware that any misstep could unleash a fresh avalanche of rumors linking them romantically. What do you think about Leon's subtle involvement so far? Feel free to drop a quick 1 in the comments if you sense a deeper bond, or 2 if you suspect a purely professional alliance. Despite the tension swirling around the Crest estate, Elena insisted on hosting a philanthropic luncheon for donors who had remained loyal to the Crest Foundation. The event was intended to maintain goodwill, but it also served another purpose: to show the world that she hadn't collapsed under the weight of her husband's transgressions. Arranged in the estate's ornate garden, a patchwork of sculpted hedges and pastel blooms, the luncheon featured an understated elegance meant to reassure guests that the foundation's mission was intact. Melinda Wu deftly managed the flow of conversation, steering donors away from prying questions about personal matters. Yet gossip found its way into every corner. Whispers of, "Do you think she'll leave him?" and "Is that Mistress still lurking about?" drifted among the rows of hydrangeas. Victor was conspicuously absent, citing an urgent board meeting, though everyone suspected he merely wanted to avoid a humiliating confrontation. In his place arrived an unexpected guest, Leon Braxton. Heads turned as he entered, exuding a calm authority that felt almost regal. He offered Ileana a respectful nod, ignoring the fleeting hush that swept across the garden. If the donors were curious, they masked it behind polite smiles and handshakes. Leon then delivered a short address about the importance of new healthcare initiatives for underserved communities, a cause both his and Ileana's organizations had championed. By the time he finished, more than half the guests wore expressions of approval or even admiration. But the day took a startling turn after the final group photo. As Ileana walked Leon to his car, paparazzi ambushed them at the estate's iron gates. Cameras flashed, capturing an awkward moment where Ileana leaned in to thank him. Just as Leon placed a gentle hand on her shoulder to reassure her, the tabloids pounced on that fleeting gesture. Within hours, social media buzzed with images labeled Ileana Crest's Next Love and Secret Partnership Sparks Intimate Moment. The narrative was shifting, and though Ileana hated the insinuation, a part of her felt an undeniable spark of respect and warmth for Leon. She wondered, could their easy camaraderie blossom into something that transcended business? Or was she merely grasping for kindness in the midst of heartbreak? By the way, how do you feel about the media swirling around Ileana like a relentless storm? Comment 1 if you sympathize with her plight, or 2 if you think she should handle the press differently. Meanwhile, across town in a luxury penthouse hotel suite, Rafaela Cross scrolled through her phone with mounting frustration. She had expected to revel in triumphant headlines proclaiming her the new queen of society. Instead, the tabloids had turned sour, labeling her a homewrecker and fixating on Leon Braxton's rumored connection to Ileana. Worse, designers who once courted her for cameo appearances were now sending polite apologies and rescinding invitations. Victor Crest had grown distant too, increasingly short in his phone calls and text messages. He rarely spent nights at her penthouse now. The foundation scandal overshadowed his personal life. He was embroiled in crisis management, with lawyers, PR reps, and donors threatening to flee. Rafaela sniffed in disgust every time he mentioned damage control. She might have welcomed the limelight, but never the burden of an impending downfall. Desperate to revive her status, Rafaela contacted a gossip columnist she had once fed tips to. She dangled bits of scandal, unconfirmed rumors about Leon Braxton's hidden net worth, speculation on Ileana's unborn child's paternity, hoping to redirect the tabloids her way. But the columnist wanted something bigger, bolder, real evidence of financial improprieties within the Crest Foundation. Rafaela seized on the opportunity, recalling how Victor had bragged about hidden accounts, hush funds, and questionable international investments. She just needed to confirm a few details. That night, while Victor was away, Rafaela poured a glass of expensive rosé and studied an old email password scribbled on a sticky note. She had swiped it from Victor's jacket pocket weeks ago. Logging into an account, she discovered cryptic references to wire transfers and consultancy fees. If these documents were legit, it could not only undermine the foundation but also implicate Ileana as well. If Rafaela spun the story just right. What none of them realized was that a formidable storm was brewing, one that could eclipse every scandal so far. Carefully curating the most incriminating details, Rafaela prepared her next move. A blackmail attempt if necessary, a full-blown leak if that failed. If you're on the edge of your seat, let us know. Drop a quick comment with your reaction. 1 for shock, 2 for I saw this coming. Late that week, Elena found herself in the office of her attorney, Amelia Choi. The crisp walls were adorned with law diplomas and a single black and white painting of San Francisco's skyline, an artistic reflection of Amelia's precise and strategic mind. Both women sat at a wide mahogany table, scanning legal documents that could insulate Ileana and the foundation from any potential claims of misconduct tied to Victor's personal dealings. Amelia, adjusting her rectangular glasses, spoke in measured tones. Rumors suggest unscrupulous wire transfers and hush agreements. We need to ensure there's zero evidence linking you to any wrongdoing, Ileana. Ileana pressed her lips together, a subtle tremor in her hands. I've always managed philanthropic accounts separately, but I can't control what Victor might have done behind my back. If the press conflates his actions with the Foundation's legitimate work, it could be catastrophic. While they strategized, Melinda Wu hurriedly entered, phone in hand. I just got word from an inside source that someone's shopping around a file, alleged proof of the Crest Foundation siphoning donor funds for private use. The rumor is it came from Rafaela. The tension snapped like an overstretched wire. Ileana felt her breath catch. If any false narrative tied her to fraud or mismanagement, everything she'd built for the Foundation could collapse overnight. Amelia's jaw tightened. We'll need a proactive statement, but first let's see exactly what they claim to have. Turning to Ileana, she added gently, prepare yourself. This could get ugly. Indeed, the next morning, a leading gossip site teased an exclusive Crest Foundation bombshell, claiming an anonymous insider would reveal illicit funds, hush contracts, and secret accounts. Though no hard evidence was posted, the insinuation alone triggered calls from anxious donors. Some pledged to suspend their contributions if clarity wasn't provided. At lunch that day, Ileana glanced repeatedly at her phone, half expecting a frantic call from Victor. It never came. Instead, it was Leon Braxton who reached out with a calm, steady voice. I heard. I have resources that can help. Let me know if you need me. A wave of relief, or was it gratitude, washed over her. Have you ever been caught in a swirling rumor mill? Comment 1 if you can relate to Ileana's stress, or 2 if you think she should take bolder action. Meanwhile, Victor wrestled with his own demons. Hidden in his once regal study, a space with mahogany shelves stuffed with business journals and philanthropic awards, he clutched a tumbler of whiskey, mind swirling in a haze of regret. He had believed that juggling a glamorous mistress and a philanthropic empire was within his skill set. Yet the meltdown unfolding before him proved how catastrophically he had miscalculated. Rafaela's menacing texts and cryptic hints about going public weighed heavily on him. He could sense her desperation, the lurking threat of blackmail. Already, donors were backing away. Some board members quietly expressed that, if another major scandal broke, they'd demand Victor's immediate resignation. He was losing everything he once prized: his philanthropic clout, his marriage, his paternal aspirations. In the past, Victor might have gone to Ileana for advice, ironically enough. Once upon a time, she was the level-headed strategist who kept the Crest Foundation true to its mission. But now he had burned that bridge. A swirl of anger flickered in him, anger at his own mistakes, at Rafaela for her manipulations, even at Leon Braxton for effortlessly stepping into Ileana's orbit. He watched an old photograph on his desk, a candid shot of him and Ileana at a groundbreaking ceremony, smiling in the sunshine, back when trust and partnership flowed naturally between them. These days, that trust was dead, replaced by suspicion and wounded pride. If Rafaela unleashed whatever half-baked evidence she had, not only would he risk criminal scrutiny, but he'd drag Ileana and the entire foundation down with him. Finally, he hurled his whiskey glass into the fireplace, where it shattered in a burst of sparks. He realized that any path to redemption might require a brutal confession. But could he bear the consequences? Could he face Ileana and admit he'd compromised their philanthropic goals for the sake of his ego? Just then, his phone pinged, a single line from Rafaela. We need to talk, or I send everything to the press. Victor shut his eyes, a cold sweat forming. Time was running out, and each decision was about to set off a chain reaction no crisis manager could contain. How do you think Victor should handle Rafaela's threat? Hit 1 if you think he should come clean, 2 if you believe he should attempt one last cover-up. The next morning, Ileana was awakened by a chorus of phone alerts. A major gossip outlet had just published a teaser accusing the Crest Foundation of funneling money into undisclosed side ventures. They promised to release concrete proof within 24 hours. Panic flared. She leapt out of bed, heart pounding, already dialing Amelia Choi. "I saw it," Amelia said, voice laced with urgency. "We need a press conference, full transparency. Show them you have nothing to hide." Melinda Wu agreed, adding, "If we stay silent, the rumor dominates. If we get ahead of it, we might salvage public trust." The rapid planning that followed was a blur. Calls to board members, donors, supportive philanthropists. Everyone needed reassurance. By midday, a podium and microphone were being set up in the Crest Mansion's grand foyer, the same marble expanse where the couple had once hosted elegant galas. Now it was a stage for damage control. Despite her nerves, Ileana's voice was calm and resolute when she addressed the sea of cameras. She revealed that an external audit would begin immediately, reaffirmed that her philanthropic accounts had always been separate from any personal dealings, and reiterated the foundation's unwavering commitment to pediatric health care. The press bristled with follow-up questions, but she refused to reveal more until the audit was complete. Victor emerged from the shadows to deliver a terse, supporting statement. He accepted full responsibility for any questionable financial paths and clarified that Ileana had no knowledge or involvement. The words rang with contrition, but whether the public would believe him was anyone's guess. When the press finally dispersed, Ileana stood under the chandelier's harsh glow, gazing at Victor's drawn face. "Is there anything else?" she asked, her tone both weary and expectant. He hesitated, eyes betraying a swirl of guilt. "There are files, shell companies, hush money deals. I never thought it would spin out of control." A cold wave of dread washed over her. If even half of that data went public, it could doom the Crest Foundation. Elena gave a faint nod, lips set in a tight line. She'd reached the edge of a precipice. Any next step threatened to unravel her world completely. "If you were Ileana, would you still give Victor another chance?" Comment 1 for yes, 2 for absolutely not. Rafaela, upon seeing the press conference, fumed in her penthouse suite. She had hoped to force Victor into paying her large sums to remain quiet. Instead, he'd publicly claimed full responsibility, subtly disarming her blackmail. But she still possessed partial documents, enough to stir further doubt. If she could twist them to suggest Ileana's complicity, the media frenzy would reignite. She picked up her phone and dialed the gossip columnist. "Remember that tip I gave you? I have more. Emails with Ileana's name on them." Of course, she neglected to mention that those emails had references to philanthropic proposals, not illegal hush funds. But a well-placed rumor could spin any snippet into scandal. The gossip site took the bait, running a headline the following morning. "Leaked email ties Ileana Crest to illicit transfers. Is the philanthropy princess guilty?" The story was laced with lines like, "Source claims Ileana personally approved questionable funds, though no verifiable documents were provided." Even so, speculation caught fire on social media. People who'd praised her courage began to question her sincerity. In the midst of this chaos, Leon Braxton quietly reached out. He requested a private meeting, offering to connect Ileana with top-tier forensic accountants who could swiftly debunk the claims. Though it pained her to appear reliant on anyone, least of all a man the tabloids already paired her with, she couldn't deny the urgent need for professional expertise. They met in a sleek, glass-walled conference room in Leon's downtown office. Leon stood, tie loosened, face etched with sympathy, as Ileana recounted the fresh wave of accusations. "I have nothing to hide," she said, frustration brimming in her voice. "But even a rumor can destroy months of philanthropic work." Leon leaned across the table, eyes focused. "The truth will stand on its own, Ileana, if we gather the right documentation and present it to the public." Rafaela's story collapses. "Let me help." For a moment, Ileana let herself breathe. Perhaps trusting Leon meant risking more headlines. But the alternative, fighting alone on quicksand, was worse. She caught herself wondering if, beyond crisis management, there was a blossoming admiration between them. Then she pushed the thought away, reminding herself that her priority was preserving the foundation and protecting her unborn child from this vortex of scandal. Drop a quick comment. 1, if you believe Leon's intentions are pure, or 2, if you remain suspicious of his motives. With Leon's forensic team at work, Ileana returned to the estate to confront Victor directly. He had barricaded himself in his study, rummaging through old folders and thumb drives that might contain anything incriminating. The air in that once grand room smelled of stale bourbon and anxious sweat. Stacks of papers teetered on the brink of collapse. "Victor," she began, voice tight, "you have to turn over every single document you have. We can't fight half-truths with half-measures." Ah. He pressed a hand over his eyes. "I'm trying. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted us to be on top. Make bigger donations, get bigger recognition. But money from expansions got tangled with hush deals, PR payoffs to keep negative stories out, and then Rafaela came along." His words trailed off into regretful silence. Ileana clenched her jaw, her gaze moving across the disordered papers. "I never wanted the top rung of high society," she said quietly. "I wanted a foundation that genuinely helped people, and now you've jeopardized that mission." Sinking into a nearby chair, Victor quietly handed her a folder. Its contents included accounts under ambiguous names, a few marked transfers that looked suspiciously like hush payments, and cryptic references to global consultancy. Ileana's stomach churned. If the media got hold of this, the optics alone could be damning. Outside, a sudden commotion snapped them to attention. One of the estate's staff rushed in, pale-faced. "Ms. Crest, Mr. Crest, reporters are at the gates demanding a statement. A new article claims you orchestrated these shell companies, ma'am." Ileana's eyes burned with fury. She turned back to Victor. "Do you see now? Rafaela is escalating. She's twisting the narrative that I approved all of this." Victor looked crushed, a flicker of genuine remorse passing through his eyes. "Then let's expose the truth. Everything. I'll make a full confession if that's what it takes." Standing there, Ileana realized that victory against lies sometimes demands stepping into the harshest light. Could she trust Victor's newfound remorse? Or was it too little, too late? Either way, time was running out, and she was determined not to lose everything she'd fought for. "Curious where you think this is headed? Let us know." But year 1, if a total meltdown is imminent, 2, if there's hope yet for redemption. The following day, Ileana found herself behind another podium, flanked by Amelia Choi and Melinda Wu, with Leon Braxton quietly standing near the back of the room. This time, the setting was the Crest Foundation's modern downtown office, a place symbolic of the philanthropic mission she desperately wanted to protect. The press conference was streamed online. Thousands watched in real time as Ileana unfolded printouts of forensic audit findings. "We are here to disclose the preliminary results of an in-depth audit," she began, her voice echoing slightly in the large space. She walked the audience through key evidence showing that the primary philanthropic accounts had never intermingled with hush money or personal slush funds. Yes, suspicious transactions existed, but they were tied to accounts personally controlled by Victor. More importantly, the logs proved that Ileana's name and passwords had been used only for legitimate philanthropic activities. Victor then took the microphone, shoulders slumped. His eyes flickered with what seemed like genuine remorse. He confessed to setting up secondary shell accounts to accelerate investments, acknowledging that ambition overshadowed ethics. Though it was a humiliating admission, he insisted that Ileana had no part in his financial gambles. For a tense moment, the entire press corps buzzed, cameras clicking like insects swarming a floodlight. Reporters hurled questions about the authenticity of his statement, about Rafaela, and the timing of his confession. In response, Amelia Choi promised full cooperation with any regulatory investigation. Before the conference ended, Ileana pivoted to the future. The Crest Foundation's pediatric initiatives will continue, with new oversight to guarantee full transparency. "Our mission remains unwavering, to help children who need it most." She concluded with a promise that the foundation would sever any partnerships that undermine that core value, no matter who was involved. Victor stepped aside, nodding to Ileana as if in apology. But she gave a brief, measured nod back. Empathy laced with heartbreak, underlined by the knowledge that her personal relationship with him might be damaged beyond repair. Still, she couldn't deny a glimmer of relief that the truth was coming to light, even if it arrived painfully late. If you've been following closely, comment 1 if you believe Victor's confession redeems him, or 2 if you think he's beyond saving. Predictably, the press conference sparked a firestorm of commentary. Some praised Ileana for her bold transparency. Others vilified Victor as the archetype of a greedy billionaire. Rafaela Cross, on the other hand, found her ammunition rapidly disintegrating. With Victor's confession out in the open, her leaks no longer carried the shock value she'd hoped for. She sulked in her penthouse, drained her last bottle of champagne, and furiously texted her gossip columnist contact. "Your angle is stale. Let's twist it. Blame Ileana for ignoring the signs. Make her look like a co-conspirator." But the columnist, watching the public tide turn, offered only a polite refusal. "We won't run that story without credible evidence. The new audits back Ileana's innocence. Sorry, Rafaela." Stuck in freefall, Rafaela realized the walls were closing in. Her expulsion from high society had already begun. No more glamorous invites, no more free designer dresses. Even overseas tabloids refused to pay top dollar for a story the main players had already diffused. Fear gnawed at her. Once her hotel bill came due, how would she maintain her extravagant lifestyle? On the other side of town, the Crest Foundation was stabilizing. Donors breathed a collective sigh of relief, recommitting pledges once they saw that Ileana wasn't implicated in wrongdoing. Leon Braxton's partnership with the foundation began in earnest, supporting new pediatric clinics and software expansions. Soon, local headlines lauded their collaboration. Innovation meets philanthropy. Crest Foundation and Braxton's visionary tech joined forces. Still, behind the uplifting news, Ileana grappled with the emotional shrapnel of Victor's betrayal. Late one evening, after an exhausting round of meetings, she walked through the grand hallway of her estate, pausing at the door of the new nursery. Painted in soft hues of lavender, the room glowed under a tiny nightlight shaped like a moon. She ran her hand over a crib set up for her soon-to-arrive baby, heart heavy yet unbroken. Would she and Victor co-parent in peace? Could she find the courage to trust another man again? Particularly Leon, whose quiet support had eased her burdens without demanding anything in return. Life felt both precarious and exhilarating, as if she were finally steering her own destiny. Share your thoughts. 1, if you think Ileana should forge a new path without Victor. 2, if there's a chance to rebuild their marriage. Ileana's baby arrived sooner than expected, an early morning in late autumn when a hush fell over the estate. Rushed to the hospital, she gave birth to a son she named Oliver Crest, a bright-eyed infant whose first cries reverberated with an almost poetic defiance of the chaos that had preceded his birth. Holding him in her arms, Ileana felt a flood of relief and renewal, as if her life had been stripped down to what truly mattered. Though tensions remained between Ileana and Victor, he did show up at the hospital. Unsure and visibly anxious, he lingered near the doorway until a nurse gently directed him inside. Ileana allowed him a moment to hold Oliver, watching his hands tremble as the child's tiny fist curled around his father's finger. In Victor's eyes there flickered an ache of realization, an understanding of the consequences of his misdeeds, of what he had nearly lost. Returning home, Ileana found a staff of caretakers and well-wishers eager to support her. Flowers adorned every table, including a bouquet from Leon Braxton with a simple note. "For both of you, congratulations on this new beginning." Her heart softened at the sentiment. In the quiet hours of newborn feedings and rocking Oliver to sleep, Ileana felt the shape of her life shifting. She was, for the first time in a long while, defining her future without waiting for permission. Victor, for his part, retreated to a guest wing in the estate. He respected the boundaries Ileana set, abiding by a schedule for visits with Oliver. Meanwhile, legal discussions about divorce or separation persisted in the background, led by Amelia Choi. Each decision weighed on Ileana. Was it wise to sever ties completely, or could they craft a new kind of partnership for the sake of their child? In fleeting, reflective moments, Ileana allowed herself to contemplate the possibility of love again, perhaps with someone who had proven steadfast through the darkest storms. She wasn't naive about the challenges. Scars remained, her trust in men still ragged at the edges. But the quiet presence of Leon continued to soothe her battered spirit, reminding her that genuine care, untainted by ambition or deception, might still exist. New motherhood can be a whirlwind. Comment 1 if you believe Ileana should focus solely on parenting. 2 if love deserves a second chance in her life. As Oliver reached 3 months old, The Crest Foundation soared to new heights under Ileana's leadership. Board members praised her for turning near disaster into a renaissance of transparency and purpose. Leon Braxton's tech expertise propelled the pediatric programs forward. Children in underprivileged communities received advanced health care they never had access to before. Every success story, every tearful parent grateful for an early diagnosis or a life-saving intervention, reminded Ileana why she'd fought so hard. Rafaela Cross, on the other hand, vanished from American tabloids almost overnight. Whispers suggested she'd fled to Monaco, later to the Swiss Alps, searching for wealthy benefactors to finance her fading star power. She attempted to leak exclusive bombshells about the Crest family to a European gossip channel, but her stories fell flat without fresh evidence. The few tabloids that printed her name described her as a cautionary tale, a flash of glamour undone by her own hubris. Between board meetings and late-night feedings for Oliver, Ileana found stolen moments to reflect on how drastically her life had changed. When she ventured to the Foundation's new downtown offices, Leon often joined her for coffee breaks. They talked about everything but the scandal, her postpartum triumphs and struggles, her desire to maintain a balanced life for Oliver, even the philanthropic dreams she once shelved because of Victor's controlling ambitions. One crisp afternoon, Leon gently confided, "You know, Ileana, I never intended to step into your personal life. My initial aim was purely philanthropic, our pediatric software expansions. But now," he paused, searching for the right words as a hint of vulnerability flickered across his usually composed face. Ileana felt a rush of warmth. "You've been a rock for me," she admitted. "I can't thank you enough for that." She said it simply, without any flourish, realizing that shared trust often begins in the smallest acknowledgments. Beneath it all, subtle sparks of possibility glimmered. Neither dared voice it openly, mindful of the media circus that would erupt if they confirmed a romantic bond. But the Foundation's staff and close friends noticed the smiles they exchanged, the near telepathic synergy in every meeting. Something more, like an unspoken promise, was in the air. Speaking of synergy, do you sense a deeper connection brewing? Comment 1, if love is in the air. 2, if they should keep it strictly business. Months later, the Crest Mansion hosted a celebratory gathering for the successful launch of the Braxton Crest Pediatric Initiative, an event that symbolized a new chapter for everyone involved. The courtyard bustled with medical professionals, donors, and philanthropic allies. A live string quartet played softly under a canopy of twinkling fairy lights. At the center of it all, Ileana stood with Oliver in her arms, graciously accepting congratulations for a job well done. Leon arrived late, having been delayed by a call with overseas partners. He offered Ileana a gentle smile as he approached. In that moment, the world seemed to slow. The hush of the crowd, the glow of the lights, and the soft cooing of baby Oliver combined into a tapestry of hope. As though by unspoken agreement, they stepped off to the side of the courtyard, where a blossoming cherry tree provided a touch of privacy. Leon exhaled, gaze lingering on Oliver. "I see so much joy in his eyes," he said quietly. "Despite everything that happened, you've given him a world of possibilities." Ileana nodded, placing a soft kiss on her son's forehead. "I want him to grow up knowing that even in the face of betrayal, one can find purpose and rebuild." She turned her gaze toward Leon, emotion tightening in her chest. "You taught me that too. You showed me loyalty without condition." A faint breeze rustled the cherry blossoms overhead. It felt symbolic, like the stirring of a future unburdened by the sins of the past. Ileana swallowed, heart pounding. The press would explode with speculation if they even hinted at a public display of affection, but part of her was done living in fear. Leon stepped closer, reaching out to gently touch Oliver's tiny hand. In the hush of that intimate moment, Ileana realized how profoundly she trusted him. Quiet acceptance passed between them. It was a promise of partnership, perhaps of love, but certainly of two spirits who had found each other in the storm. Suddenly, a staff member approached with an envelope. "Delivered at the gate," she murmured apologetically. Ileana opened it, her face paling. Inside lay a photograph of Victor from years ago, standing beside an unidentifiable figure in a setting that looked militaristic. Scrawled across the back in bold letters, "You think it's over, but the real game has only begun." Liana's breath caught in her throat. Why was this photograph sent now? Who was that shadowed figure? Chills rippled down her spine. Was there yet another secret buried deeper than all the scandals before? Or could it be a final vestige of Rafaela's desperation? She glanced at Leon, who immediately recognized her alarm. Baby Oliver stirred, sensing his mother's tension. The night air thickened, a silent warning that the past might not be finished with them. If you want to see what happens next, drop a comment. 1, if you're eager for part 3. 2, if you think Ileana should let sleeping dogs lie. Either way, your feedback keeps these stories alive. Thank you for reading, and stay tuned. The next twist might already be in motion.